Hey guys, so welcome back. Today we're going over the final piece of that on-field test that some YouTube journalists conducted to cross-check the claims of the fishermen who said that they found somebody at 4:40 a.m. going into the river and splashing around saying, oh, how refreshing. And remember that claim, that just eyewitness testimony that nobody else heard, is being used as the fundamental foundation to create this theory that SJM just walked into the river and decided to end his life. Okay, so after they did the blob test where they wanted to see whether the blobs that most likely indicate at 3:31 to 3:32 that the two made their way from the grassy knoll to the river. Once that was done, they continued on to see whether they can do an audio test at least, and also somewhat of a visual test, to see if the fisherman's story held up. From over 80 meters away, could you really hear somebody do all of that in the river? And if you could, why wouldn't other people who are much closer also be able to hear? So they set up people who were volunteers in each of the spots that replicated locations of other witnesses and other people who were at the park on that night. So in total, there were 11 people, 11 other groups that were sitting in that park. And then they put the fishermen way over there at 80 meters. Then they had one of the other journalists volunteer, and it was sort of like he wanted to go into the water, but he didn't really go into the water, so at least it was as close as they could to go into the water. So at first he yelled out, like really loud, and everybody heard it. It was like Shakespeare in the Park, it was like Romeo saying, Juliet, come out into the water. It's so nice. It's so refreshing at 4:40 a.m. And so how they did it was like, if you heard, you would shake the flashlight on your smartphone. So everybody heard that one. Then he did it just normally, like in a smaller tone of voice, and only people around him on the grassy knoll heard, but they did hear. But then the people all the way over where the fishermen were, they were just like talking, like as if they were just waiting for the experiment to continue, and they were just like on standby. They did not hear. So that also shows that the fishermen were less likely to hear. The people on the grassy knoll were much more likely to hear, yet the opposite occurred. So what gives? So, as we already saw, the fishermen's testimony seemed very sus. Their whole demeanor seemed very sus, and even the way that they came about to give this testimony is super sus. Because in the TV interview, they even made a really big point. They even wasted airspace like this in the script, which is a big deal. Every word counts, especially on network TV. They even made like a big deal, like created several sentences to say, the fishermen went to us at SBS on May 12th, 11:30 p.m. before they even went to the police. Okay, like who really cares? But okay, sure. And then turns out the police issued a report saying that the fishermen were contacted on May 12th. So, so who's telling the truth, right? And who really cares? Unless there is a critical moment in the timeline, if you're concocting a story where somehow that needs to line up, that's a red flag. So if it doesn't really make any difference, or it doesn't really matter, but then in the construction of a falsehood, you need to make sure something matches up, and you need to make sure that's important, and you have to lie about that, that's a red flag. And then it's It's super sus when you didn't do it right and then all the wires get crossed and it's like crashing into each other. Alright, so I thought that was going to be like a big deal, but that's so not even a big deal because we already knew they were suspicious. We cross-checked it with the on-site, but actually, now it does lead us to even more revelations that are a little bit scary. So let's move on to the next part of this, which was unexpected. So there's something scary that happened with the continuation of the experiment, and in trying to dig through the story of the fisherman, there was something more revealed in the CCTV. And then as I was trying to get through some of the footage, I saw something a little bit more suspicious that I wanted to share with you because we have been given a lot of edited CCTV footage in mainstream news now I'm seeing. Alright, so let's go over the something kind of scary part. So let's move back to the 3:30 time frame. So 3:30, 3:31, 3:32, that's when we believe that the two fell over into the riverbank. Most likely, Mr. A followed SJM over onto the riverbank. And I guess the theory now is that SJM probably fell backwards, most likely hit his head on the rocks twice. And a lot of you have been asking, like, well, how did he actually get into the deeper part of the water? Does the water rise and does the current carry him out? No, it doesn't. That's why this case is riddled with suspicion, because there is absolutely no way for the water to naturally carry somebody out from that position. So that's why it's so important for either the fisherman's testimony to be correct, that somebody physically walked out to the deeper end, or for it to be proven that someone, unfortunately and in a very dark manner, carried SJM's body to a deeper part of the river. That area of the river does not get deep enough where, like, it's not like, the ocean where high tide and then, the waves like kind of move. And even in the part where that's immediately after the rocks, where it does get a little bit deeper, where it's about a person's height, they've already done the current analysis and the water doesn't really move that much. It's a bit stagnant in that area. So again, that argument that he was just brushing up against logs, well, SJM's father even really challenged that point too, because he's saying that it doesn't move that fast for him to get all of these cuts on his cheek and the real big cuts on his head. They're really moving back towards, why aren't you explaining why SJM had these injuries to his head and whether they happened before he went into the water? Okay, so again, after 3:32, when both of the blobs are on the riverbank, we said in the last video that another blob came up around 3:35. We believe that to be Mr. A. He paces around for about 2 minutes, and then we see a blob stop near the tree. We believe that's when he makes the phone call to his parents. That's when that photo is taken, the 3:37, 3:38 photo of Mr. A by himself next to the tree on the phone with his backpack. The time period where witness number 1 claims to have seen both Mr. A and SJM and claims to have been there, but the picture does not even show witness number 1 and SJM. So again, we're saying witness number 1 is probably some made-up witness or a witness that was there but left an hour before. Okay, so now we're at 3:37. So there's still a family sitting nearby, And we see the shadow of Mr. A just staying there out of sight until about 4 a.m. From 4:01 a.m. to 4:10 a.m., there's a silhouette of his still moving around, and then around 4:10 a.m. it stops moving. So is this when he falls asleep, or is this when perhaps somebody went in the water? Like, we don't really know what happened. But then we do know that originally it was reported that he was woken up at 4:20. Then a week later, quietly, the report was changed to 4:27, and we were never offered an explanation why. But remember when we were looking at the Burberry lady who went to the Riverside area and looked and then kind of did a double take and then went back and sat and waited and then went back down? Remember, that was 4:23 a.m. At 4:23 a.m., she went down, and then we saw at 5 a.m. she emerged. So, related to the fisherman's story, that's one witness directly on the riverbank that should have seen somebody go into the water, if it wasn't her herself. Because again, we have not proven even the gender of the person that went into the water, or even whether really there was a person that walked into the water and said how refreshing it was. So it could have been her. She could have just taken a swim. Who knows? Burberry woman might have, been into early morning river swimming. So she should be questioned. And not only that, we have what's being called as the 4:39 a.m. man. So 4:39 a.m. man also emerged. There is definitely somebody right at the spot of the 4:40 incident. And again, 4:40 is somewhat of an estimate. So they're saying it could be 4:38 to 4:40, depending on how long somebody smokes a cigarette, right? Because the fisherman said that I took the picture at 4:33 and then I smoked, and while I was smoking, I saw it. So people are like, I guess you smoked for about 5 minutes, I guess. We have to go over why it's scary, because it challenges our previously thought notions of just things that were normal. Okay, so Burberry lady was always creepy and nothing has changed there. We haven't really seen any new information on her. She's just creepy because she also has a trench coat. Trench coats are always creepy anyway. We haven't found any new information about her, but she is still just creepy, and she was in a creepy situation and she's still creepy. What's really creepy is 4:39 a.m. man who is new. He emerged from that area. We don't really know exactly when he got onto the riverbank, but he emerged out of the riverbank at 4:39, 4:40. And actually now witness number 6, the guy who woke up, Mr. A, supposedly, he's now creepy. He is now officially creepy AF. He's creepy. You know why? Okay, so we tracked witness number 6, the guy who woke up, Mr. A. We tracked him all the way to the convenience store. Yep. So you see, he went all the way to the convenience store. And he's standing there next to some other dude. Okay, that other dude becomes creepy, but we'll hold off on him right now. Then 4:39 a.m. man, guess where he also goes? To the convenience store. And people are like, do they know each other? Or is this just coincidence? Because, at that, maybe they all just want a snack in the morning. I don't know. But 4:39 a.m. man doesn't go inside. He don't go inside. He doesn't go inside for a snack or a drink. He goes straight towards the area where they have the trash cans and the microwaves and the instant ramen makers. Yeah, you can make these instant ramen things. I've never had it, but it looks so nasty but so good. But I don't know. If you've had it, let us know whether it's worth it. And again, we have this horrible situation where we can't see what he's doing because he is being blocked. Stays there, we don't know exactly what happens, but we do see a reaction from a couple that comes out of the convenience store. So a couple comes out of the convenience store, they did buy something, and we have other CCTV footage from the convenience store that shows this couple. Now, the conservative YouTube channel, they got confused and they thought that this couple was actually the friend and the guy that woke up Mr. A, but it's actually the couple, this man and this woman. So this man and this woman, and it makes more sense now because this man and this woman go towards that area. Maybe they had to heat up something, and they go and they're like, whoa, what is this? Apparently, obviously, they were shocked by what they saw. Maybe they saw 4:39 a.m. man and they were like, what the hell is going on? So you see the woman immediately back off first. So then you know that's a situation, right? I mean, not to be so gender biased, but if the guy is protecting the girl, then that sort of shows a little bit more indication that there might be some kind of a danger element. And then the guy kind of approaches again, and it looks like he's trying to offer some sort of help, but it looks like he's just rebuffed and then they just leave. So that's kind of creepy. Then we don't know what happens to 4:39 a.m. and it looks like he just leaves somehow. Probably into the woods, into the bushes, because that's what creepy people do. Alright, so now let's turn our attention back to witness number 6, who's now creepy. He's in the white shirt. He's the guy that woke up Mr. A. He's creepy, but his friend is even creepier now, and we didn't even know about his friend. We had no idea about his friend, but he has a friend, and we're calling him Wet Cell Phone Buddy because he goes into the convenience store. Witness number 6 does not go into the convenience store, but Wet Cell Phone Buddy does. And we're calling him Wet Cell Phone Buddy because he leaves his cell phone there to get charged around 4:10 a.m. And people were just like, what? Why would you charge your phone for 30 minutes? That seems a little bit weird. Wouldn't you just go home? Why are you charging your phone there? And then why are you waddling in like that as if you're wet? So I'm not saying he's wet or not. I don't know. But he's just been accused of that. But number one reason why he's creepy, look at how this video shows him trying to get his phone. He is just reaching his arm down the counter and just digging around. And what's even creepier is that the employee just kind of gives it to him as if that employee totally looks like he got And so the employee was very cooperative. And then when he walked in, he was waddling. And so I was just okay. There could be 3 things. He could be drunk, exhausted, or maybe he is wet. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he pee-peed in his pants or something. And so I looked up, I'm not making any judgment. I just want to show you what a drunk person looks like when they walk, what an exhausted person looks like when they walk, and what a wet person looks like when they walk. So as you can see, when a drunk person walks, they lose their center of balance, but they're really trying so hard to find it and keep it. But when they're walking, the teetering is kind of the main visual that you see. When somebody is exhausted, yes, they're kind of shuffling from side to side, but the motion is more forward. It's as if they're trying to cover distance still, but with the least amount of effort. And the hunch is kind of moving in a forward direction. And they're trying to gain momentum. Now, when you're wet, You really do look like a duck. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like it's universal. When you're wet, you kind of walk like a duck, especially when you're not in your bathing suit. When you're in your bathing suit, you're just like prance around like it's nothing, right? But there's something about like wet normal clothes, especially I think it's something about your underwear. I don't know what exactly it is, but I didn't realize, but I think almost everybody does this. Like somehow you just start waddling because I think you're trying to like reduce the amount of body contact or something that you have. And it's super inefficient, but the focus is on, I guess, your comfort. And so I'll just leave it there to show you what it looks like in those three different situations. So then now we see this cell phone guy at the convenience store who's accused of being wet, get his phone, take his bag, looking like he just left the water park, and then meet up with witness number 6 who woke up Mr. A, and they both leave the park. And they take the same route that, remember when SJM and Mr. A kind of walk and then run, and then they go to meet up with the Coupon Eats man? They go on that same route and then they leave. Now we're going to move to something really sus. And speaking of that running route, that CCTV footage that we've seen of them running, at first it looked like it was just them being playful. That's how we interpreted it. Then we found out that it was, playful, but they had a mission of going to meet the Coupon Eats man. Now it turns out that we were shown very edited CCTV footage. Now take a look at the middle clip that has been taken out of most of the broadcasts that we've been shown up until this point. Now it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, I guess. It just, and it should help Mr. A's case more, I would think, because it seems to be more of a friendly gesture. But I always thought it was a little bit interesting how, like, even in the edited photo, there was just a little touch of jazz hands, like when there was like a jazz. But then I was like, okay, whatever, that was just probably just maybe a stretch to get into running, or like, momentum from a bottle, just like while you're drinking and running. But then you can see there was at least 3 jazz hands there. And that's some pretty good jazz hand motion. I'm just saying, it's pretty jazzy. And combined with a bit of the footage that we saw before, where there was a lot of, let's just say, advances made that were rebuffed, I'm beginning to think that there might be something to a motive. And the reason why I say that is that is not the only highly edited CCTV footage that I noticed. Earlier on in the coverage, there was, just in a regular news broadcast, a video of the tunnel of the two when they first go into the park. Before they go to the first convenience store in the park, before the first time that they make the transaction at 11:14, which means before the blackout for Mr. A, where they're walking, and this one was less edited than all of the subsequent tunnel entries. Take a look at this one. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems to me a very purposeful gesture. That to me looks like a very... look, that was not once, not twice, but thrice, and who knows what happened after that because it just got cut off. And I only say that because I feel like I've been in that situation before, both welcomed and unwelcomed. Because it didn't seem friendly. Friendly is more overt. Friendly is communicated a lot more out in the open. That seemed to me like signals. That seemed to me like questions that were seeking answers for permission to go to the next step, or warnings that the next step was going to be crossed. I don't know exactly legally how this is, or whether an investigation could be created based on this motive, or whether SJM's family would even want this. But given the fact that we don't have clear CCTV footage in terms of physical assault, a physical explanation of how SJM got from the riverbank to the water, unless they give us the CCTV footage from the bridge, that would solve it, but that's another issue. What we do have is clear CCTV images of the relationship physically of the two friends from the convenience store and from closer interactions to the CCTV cameras in the tunnel and along the walkways. And if it was indeed the case where this is a little bit of unwelcome advances, and if this crosses into territory where this could be like assault, then perhaps this could lead to an investigation where Mr. A needs to answer more questions than just his friend running and tripping and falling and him dragging him up from the riverbank. There may be other questions that he may need to answer about what may have happened and why. I know Korea may not want to touch this right now, but if you do want to be part of the G10, at least get the G part right. That's our update for right now. I'll let you guys know more as more developments happen. See you next time. Bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.